Hello and welcome to HITC Sevens, and to today's video, which is my 1000th video. Yep, that's right, 1000 videos. Along the way, there have been some highs, there have been some lows, and then, 900 odd videos in between. Thank you all for supporting the channel for this long, if you've been here, since the start, 3.5 years ago, or if you are just a new subscriber today, or if you're not subscribed, in which case do subscribe now. Now, some of you have wished me happy 1000 videos on yesterday's video and the day before. According to YouTube, this is my 1000th video, but I think the source of that confusion may be that I've had a couple of videos that my boss has made me delete over the years, only 2 or 3, because he was worried that he'd get sued. So, yeah, officially this is at least the 1000th video then, maybe a couple more, either way. Apologies in advance for the lighting. I know it might be a bit dark in here, but I live in England where at this time of year it gets light around 11:30 and then dark again by around 12:30. So if you're from somewhere where it's light for more hours than that, you won't realise these struggles. Or if you're watching from Canada or Scandinavia, you're probably watching and thinking stop showing off. But anyhow, I realised it was my 1000th video and I panicked and thought I best do some kind of special video, and I couldn't really think of anything, so I thought why not just do a video on the best players of my lifetime, something a bit more personal. But it's a sort of a two-part video, which I'll explain in a moment. But as you know, I've made videos in the past on the greatest players of all time in lots of different genres, and I've made the greatest of the decade when, well, around this time last year, as we came to the end of a decade. So, but never one just specific to me, my lifetime. So, the first section of this video is going to be who I think are the 7 greatest footballers during my lifetime. Pretty straightforward. So, whilst I've been alive, who do I think have been the 7 best footballers? And then the second part is going to be the 7 best players that I've seen live. Not in the sense of, say, oh, have you seen Ronaldo live? Well then, he's very good. But the best performances that I've ever seen live. So they might not necessarily be the best players overall, but they are the best live performances that I've seen, as in a ground, not watching on TV. The first part is going to be like a normal video, so I'm just going to go over to have the graphics with the Getty images and that kind of thing, and then afterwards, shorter, quicker, come back to me and I will talk you through the second part. Probably going to be quite a long video, probably only going to be the die-hard sort of HITC Sevens fans that watch, about 15-20,000 of you probably. So thank you to all of you. Oh, and just before I start, I should probably clarify my age for those of you who don't know, seeing as though the video is based around my lifetime. I was born in January the 30th, 1996. So that is my lifespan that we are dealing with. Right, so here we go with the first part of the video, which is the 7 greatest footballers of my lifetime. Romario. By far the oldest player in this 7, Romario was probably at his absolute best before I was even born, and he was already well into his 30s by the time I became a big football fan. If I were a decade or so older, I suspect Romario would finish a couple of places higher. But even based upon what he produced during my lifetime, I simply cannot leave him out of the 7 altogether. Romario's career spanned an incredible 24 years, and he is best known in Europe for his time in Johan Cruyff's dream team at Barcelona, and obviously for his starring role at the 1994 World Cup in the United States. A dreadful trainer who would stay up all night partying before putting world-class defenders to the sword for fun, there is probably no player to have ever lived who I enjoy watching compilation videos and highlights reels of more than Romario. A genius in and around the 6-yard box, Romario was lethal from close range, but he was far more than a mere fox in the box. Quick, technically superb, and effortlessly inventive, I've never seen a more confident centre-forward in all my life. Romario was so well-rounded as a centre-forward that you could never predict how he would beat a player or score a goal. Perfectly poised and explosive out of the blocks, Romario was equally adept at taking a shot on early or going all the way and rounding the keeper, and I think he's probably the greatest exponent of the chip shot the sport has ever seen. It was between Romario and Thierry Henry for 7th place, and in truth, I saw a lot more of Henry growing up, but I still thought, and still think, that Romario was the superior player. Honourable mentions equally go to Paolo Maldini, Alessandro Nesta, Luis Suarez, Sergio Busquets, Andrea Pirlo, Andres Iniesta, Rivaldo, Neymar, and so many more who just missed out. Xavi. This 7 is incredibly forward-centric, and naturally there will be some who feel that that is unfair. Whilst there have obviously been some remarkable goalkeepers, defenders and midfielders during my lifetime, I do think forward players have the most difficult job of all, and that is why they are the most sought after, why they're paid the most money, and why they dominate this 7. Javi Hernandez is a welcome exception to that rule then, as, to my mind, the greatest playmaker of my lifetime. There have been a number of great ones, whether it be Paul Scholes, Andrea Pirlo or Xabi Alonso, but I always felt Xavi was the best of the lot. Whilst Lionel Messi was obviously the best player during the all-conquering Barcelona team of roughly a decade ago, I think Xavi was the team's second most important player, with Iniesta a distant third. One of the things that separated that team from all the rest was the ability to attempt passes that the vast majority of players couldn't even see, never mind attempt, and no one better surmised that aspect of their play than Xavi. A ticking midfield metronome who was everywhere and nowhere at the same time, I don't think I ever saw a player or team effectively counteract him for a full 90 minutes. Xavi had an unerring ability to make himself available for the man on the ball at all times, and without that talent, that Barcelona team or Spain team simply could not have functioned as they did. Zinedine Zidane. I've often been criticised on this channel for stating that Zinedine Zidane doesn't come close to being the greatest footballer of all time, and I stand by that claim. I won't open up that can of worms again today, since I've already made an entire video on the subject for anyone who is interested. And whilst I don't think you can put Zizou on a pedestal alongside the likes of Messi and Maradona, he is without doubt one of the finest players of my lifetime. When I was growing up, there was no player I admired more or enjoyed watching more than Zinedine Zidane. Whether it was for club or country, Zizou was elegance personified, and when he was at the races, no one could get near him. In fact, I adored Zidane so much that whenever I played for my club or school, I insisted on wearing the number 5 shirt, even after I was fortunate enough to travel to Portugal and watch him sink England for France at Euro 2004. Although mine, and I'm sure many of your memories of Zidane are coloured by his Marseille turns, flawless first touch, and incredible Champions League winning volley in 2001 against Bayer Leverkusen, Zidane had a lot more about him than your average flair player. As Roy Keane so often likes to point out, Zidane was big, standing at around 6'1", and well built to boot. He was strong, aggressive, and could even get a little bit nasty. We saw the dark side of Zizou on a couple of high-profile occasions, but most of the time, he channeled that spark into match-winning performances. A man who often looked to have been born with the ball at his feet, Zidane's invention and ability to manipulate the ball meant that he could turn a game on its head in a split second, and he's still the most outstanding true midfield player to have played during my lifetime. Ronaldinho. I put a focus on players at their peaks when deciding this 7, and that is good news for Ronaldinho. For me, and any football fan of a similar age, watching Ronaldinho was a transformative experience. He was unlike any other player on the planet, not just in terms of his talent, but when it came to his approach to the game. As I've said previously on this channel, pieces of skill that most players wouldn't dare to even attempt during a training session, Ronaldinho was content to perform in a World Cup final against some of the best defenders on the planet, and all whilst wearing his trademark smile. Ronaldinho's body swerves could send the likes of Alessandro Nesta and Sergio Ramos for a hot dog, and for a 5 or 6 year period, there was almost nothing you could do to stop him if he really wanted to punish you. Unlike, say, Messi and Ronaldo, Ronaldinho never really matured, in the sense that he never took the flamboyance out of his game in favour of being more effective in terms of either goals or assists. Nevertheless, he was so good that he still made 120 goal contributions in 150 La Liga games, for example, and it was with Barcelona that we saw Ronaldinho at his absolute best. Poetry in motion at his peak, Ronaldinho was still electric before joining Barca and thrilling for many years afterwards. A shoo-in for my top 7. Ronaldo Luis Nazario de Lima. Ronaldo Luis Nazario de Lima probably hit his peak shortly after I was born, and he was just returning from a serious injury setback when I first started taking a serious interest in the sport. It was during his time at Inter Milan that Ronaldo completely ruptured the tendons in his kneecap. The Brazilian's kneecap had effectively exploded, with physios and surgeons describing it as one of the worst injuries they had ever seen. Prior to his knee injuries, Ronaldo was without doubt the best player on the planet, head and shoulders above even the likes of Shearer, Shevchenko and Zidane. In truth, Ronaldo was probably the most talented footballer since Maradona, and were it not for his almost 2 years on the sidelines, he may well be remembered as the greatest of all time. Ronaldo was frighteningly quick, and seemingly even faster with the ball at his feet. He could beat players with skill, strength or speed, and he was averaging a goal a game from the age of 16 through to the age of 21. Even after his injury, which robbed Ronaldo of his explosiveness and remarkable speed, he was still the best player in the world. Despite having only returned from his awful knee injury for a few months, Ronaldo went to the 2002 World Cup and put in one of the most majestic tournaments the world had ever seen. In the 4 seasons that followed, Ronaldo scored 100 goals in 164 games for Real Madrid. He is the greatest out-and-out centre-forward of my lifetime, and it isn't even close. Cristiano Ronaldo. Inevitably, this video leads us into the old Messi versus Ronaldo debate, but I'm not going to tread on that since I've covered my views on the comparison in the past, and since today is a celebration, I'm just going to focus on celebrating 2 of the greatest players to have ever lived. I think Ronaldo and Ronaldinho may have been more gifted than Cristiano Ronaldo, probably Zidane as well, but none will come close in 20 or 30 years' time when we reflect upon the pantheon of football greats. From a relatively young age, Ronaldo was renowned for his ego. During his early years at Manchester United, some dismissed him as a showboater or luxury player. Following the 2006 World Cup and Ronaldo's infamous wink after Wayne Rooney's red card, he received dog's abuse at every ground the team went to. Whilst others would have buckled in these circumstances, Ronaldo thrived, just as he has thrived at every opportunity for almost 20 years. During that time, we've seen Ronaldo go from the fleet-footed wide man to the complete forward in a front 3, into a ludicrously efficient goal-scoring machine, and eventually into someone with a cold-blooded sixth sense solely for scoring goals. Ronaldo was always a fabulous footballer, but the leaping ability and heading technique, his routine accuracy when striking a ball, all these things were taught over many years and many hours on the training ground, and Ronaldo's unrelenting dedication to the sport means that he is still right at the very top, even at the age of 35. Lionel Messi. Whilst this will be viewed as inflammatory due to the debate between who is the greatest player of this generation and of all time, it is meant as a very genuine statement. Lionel Messi is by far the best footballer of my lifetime at least. I can say that in all honesty, whilst growing up and watching Ronaldo, Ronaldinho and Zidane, I still never thought there would ever be a footballer quite like Lionel Messi. Ronaldinho famously claimed that at 16, Messi was better than him in his prime, and whilst I don't know if that is a touch hyperbolic, I suspect it was true by the time Messi was 19. When Messi first broke through at Barca, it was clear that he was going to become one of the best players in the world. The ball seemed to be glued to his feet, and even in training, Barca's defenders couldn't get near him. No one could have predicted that Messi would transition so seamlessly from the right flank to a more central role and start bagging 50 goals a season by the time he was 23 though. Messi has gone above and beyond anything or anyone before him, as far as I'm concerned. Simply put, he is the best passer of ball, the best goal scorer, and the best dribbler of the ball of my lifetime at least. Put it all together, and whilst I sincerely hope that I'm wrong, I don't think that I will ever see someone as talented as Messi again. In the 2011-12 season, perhaps most preposterously of all, a 25-year-old Messi made 106 goal contributions, including scoring 73 goals across just 60 games, in a single season. Maybe someone will do that again. Maybe. But as with Ronaldo, what's remarkable is that Messi not only hit those heights, but has remained among the best players in the world for around 15 years. So those are my picks as the 7 greatest players of my lifetime. I'm sure you will have many disagreements if you're a similar age or otherwise, and you just look at the period in question. But those are my personal 7. And now for an even more personal 7, which is the 7 greatest players or 7 greatest live performances that I've ever witnessed. Keen to make this as brief as possible, partly because I know that first part was rather lengthy, and also because I'm acutely aware that there isn't much battery left on this camera. So This was very hastily assembled. There might be some that I'm forgetting, but and it's also worth remembering, for those of you who don't know, that I'm a Hull City fan. So either for or against, it is very Hull City centric. Despite the fact that I have watched quite a lot of live football outside of Hull City, the 7 has ended up being pretty Hull City game focused. Anyhow, in no particular order, I have made a note of the first 2 of the 7 is actually from the same game, which was when Chelsea beat Hull City 3-0 in at the start of the 2008-09 season under Luis Felipe Scolari at the KC Stadium, as it was then, KCOM now. And the 2 players are Frank Lampard and Deco. And they were just both... I mean, the whole Chelsea team was phenomenal that day. They cheated throughout that game, diving, gamesmanship, which was completely unnecessary because we would have been well beaten even if they had played the most ethical game known to man. But yeah, those 2 in particular were phenomenal. Deco that day may be the best individual performance I've ever seen live. He was just phenomenal. Frank Lampard scored the most amazing chipped goal that you've probably seen in the past, whether you knew it was against Hull City or not. Probably one of the best goals of his career. Yeah, so both of those players were special that day, and that they are the 2 that get us started. Then also another one, right, stepping down in calibre. It's important to remember, like I say, I have watched live the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo and Zinedine Zidane, Ronaldinho, but these are the best performances that I've seen. So those players didn't necessarily have their best ever games when I was there, which is why the next player is Everett Chiese, formerly of Queen's Park Rangers, in the game that I'm referring to, which was again against Hull City in 2019, just last season, back in those days in which we could attend football matches, and obviously now of Crystal Palace, and we lost 3-2 to Queen's Park Rangers, and he was something else. Maybe up there with the best performances I've ever seen in the Championship, either on TV or live. He was phenomenal, and ever since, immediately I thought he was a Premier League player in waiting. Obviously now he is a Premier League player. I think he can probably kick on and outgrow Crystal Palace, with all due respect to Palace fans. But yeah, that was a special performance. He scored a goal, won a penalty, and then converted the penalty. He was everywhere. He was quick. His touch, body swerve, sending players left, right, centre. He was incredible. Anyway, next up is again a bigger name, and it's Fernando Torres. Again against Hull City. This one was from 2009, so pretty much Torres, peak Torres we're talking about. And it was the season that Hull City got relegated, and we had a makeshift centre-back partnership of Ibrahima Sonko, I believe it was, and Liam Cooper, who's now Leeds United captain, but at the time was about 18 years old. And I mean, even now, I don't think he could have lived with Fernando Torres that day, but back then, alongside Ibrahima Sonko, he certainly couldn't. So Torres had an easy time of things, but even still, he was completely unplayable. Just so quick, so sharp. He scored a hat-trick. We lost 6-1. It wasn't a happy day, but an incredible performance nonetheless. Next up is, again from a Hull City game, but for the first time, a Hull City player at the time. And that's JJ Kocher. Bolton fans will have even more fond memories of JJ Kocher at Hull City. We only got him for a season, and he got injured in training by Simon Walton, so he didn't play a great deal of football for us. But whenever he did play, it was memorable, and I think his best performance was at home against Ipswich Town, which will have been still in 2007. It was the 07-08 season, and it was like men amongst boys, but not really even like that. It was just like someone who was amazing at football alongside some people who were nowhere near as good at football. Anyone who watched JJ Kocher knew what he's like, but that day he rolled back the years, and he was just taking the mick out of people, and it was an amazing performance from start to finish. A grave shame that we didn't get to see more of JJ Kocher at Hull City, but yeah, he makes my 7. Next up is Wayne Rooney, who always seemed to have a brilliant game against Hull City. I think if you look at goals per game against opponents faced, I think he only scored more goals against West Ham in terms of, well, at least in terms of English opponents. I suppose there's probably someone who got a hat-trick against and only played once in the Champions League. But English opponents, I think Hull City tended to be when he had his best games other than West Ham. But the game I'm referring to was in 2010, and it was, well, he scored 4 goals. So, I mean, if you score 4 goals in a game, typically you've had a decent game, and Rooney was electric that day. 2010 is probably about Rooney at his best as well, wasn't it? So I don't need to tell you what he was like at that time, but yeah. But I'm about to. He was bullish. He was so strong, so aggressive, involved in everything. You know, running back, winning the ball back, playing 1-2s. And scoring 4 goals. So I couldn't really leave that out. And he probably had 2 or 3 other performances that would have been close to some of the best live performances I've ever seen. And obviously watched him live a number of times at Wembley for both Man United and for England. But that was still the best individual game that I ever saw him in. The last of my 7, that was the penultimate inclusion. The last one is another actual Hull City player, not just against Hull City, and that's Boaz Myhill, who was our goalkeeper for a number of years, our goalkeeper through all 4 divisions, one of 4 players to have done that, alongside Ryan France and Ian Ashby. Who was the other one? Ryan France, Ian Ashby, Andy Dawson, of course, Andy Dawson. Apologies for that. So yeah, anyhow, Boaz Myhill was a good goalkeeper, and he had some phenomenal games for Hull City. He performed the best save I ever saw him make was actually at Vicarage Road against Watford in the playoff semi-final. We won that game 2-0, but I think his save was maybe at 1-0. That goes in, it's 1-1. The tie is in the balance. As it happened, we won 2-0 there, 4-1 at home. Cruising. But the game in question that I'm referring to is not that game. It was against Tottenham at White Hart Lane in 2000 and... I don't know, 2000... Was it? 2010? So we got relegated that season. But yeah, we drew 0-0, but we got battered all game. Barely got out of our own half. But Myhill saved everything, whether it was with his hands, with his head. Famous to remember, I think it was Robbie Keane, a shot from point blank range, and it hit Myhill in the head. Obviously, a bit of luck involved with those, but you've got to make yourself big, and he was phenomenal that day. All of these performances, I would imagine you can watch highlights, reels of online, or highlights of, and if you can't, then someone should make them. But I would imagine you can. Loads of other ones that I could have mentioned. Harry Kane and Christian Eriksen when Tottenham beat us about 15-0 in the last game of our last game in the Premier League from our most recent relegation. John Terry, who I saw have a number of phenomenal games, both against Hull City and in cup finals at Wembley. Ricardo Carvalho, same thing. Alexis Sanchez once had a fantastic game for Arsenal against us. I could go on for a long time. And like I say, there are other players. I saw, as I mentioned in part 1, I saw Zinedine Zidane live when he sunk England in Portugal at Euro 2004. But individually, it wasn't as good a performance I felt as Everett Chiese against Hull City or Boaz Myhill against Tottenham Hotspur. So yeah, I just wanted to have a bit of a more personal slant for the 1000th video. Thank you all once again for supporting the channel for this length of time. It's much appreciated. And here's to the next 1000. So that is it for today's dreadful 1000th video. The 1000th and quite possibly the worst. Thank you though, as ever, for tuning in. Give us a like if you enjoyed it, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and make sure to subscribe to HITC Sevens and turn on notifications by clicking the bell button.